Top 10 Dangerous Hells Angels Reacting to Serving Life in Prison. The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club is a large outlaw motorcycle club with chapters worldwide. Its members ride Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and it's also incorporated as the Hells Angels Motorcycle Corporation in the US and Canada. The club has 3,000 to 3,600 members and is one of the largest motorcycle clubs globally, with chapters in at least 59 countries. However, it has been associated with criminal activities, and several police and intelligence agencies consider it an organized crime syndicate. It's classified as one of the big four motorcycle gangs, along with the Pagans, Outlaws, and Bandidos, by several U.S. law enforcement agencies. Many members have been convicted and sentenced to long prison terms for their involvement in violent crimes. Here are Hells Angels' 10 members reacting to life in prison. Number 1. Maurice Boucher. Maurice Boucher was a Canadian gangster and convicted criminal who was involved in the Quebec biker war that lasted from 1994 to 2002, leading the Montreal Hells Angels against rival gang, Rock Machine Biker Gang. He was the former president of the Hells Angels Quebec Nomads chapter. Boucher's criminal record includes a conviction for assault and illegal collection of employment insurance while in prison. After his release, he quickly rose through the ranks of the Hells Angels and became a full-patch member just 3 days after the leader of a rival gang, the Death Riders, was killed. Boucher was also known for his fighting skills and strength. Boucher was a smart and charming individual who could easily connect with others. However, in 2002, during a violent conflict between the Hells Angels and a rival gang, Boucher was found guilty of orchestrating the murder of 2 random prison officers in an attempt to destabilize the Quebec justice system. The motive was to discourage prosecutors from negotiating with any biker informants. During the trial, the prosecuting attorney received death threats, and a key witness, Stéphane Gagné, testified that Boucher had ordered him to carry out the assaults. After the jury deliberated for several days, Boucher was found guilty and sentenced to 3 life sentences. He was incarcerated in Sainte-Anne-de-Plain, Canada's only maximum security prison. Boucher survived multiple assassination attempts while in prison, but passed away in July 2022 due to throat cancer while receiving palliative care in the Armchair Institution. Number 2. Jonathan Nelson, Russell Taylor Ott, Brian Wayne Went. Jonathan Nelson, Russell Taylor Ott, and Brian Wayne Went, members of the Sonoma County Hells Angels Club, were convicted of killing another club member, Joel Silver, and for conspiring to commit murder. The Sonoma County Hells Angels Club is mainly known for selling merchandise with their logo, but they've also been involved in illegal activities such as dealing drugs, assault, and obstruction of justice. Nelson conspired with Ott to have another member of the club, Silver, killed due to problems that he had created for the club. The plan was carried out with the help of Went, who assaulted Silver before his body was incinerated. The trial also exposed a pattern of behavior where members of the club would intimidate anyone who spoke to authorities about the club's activities. As a result of the trial, all 3 men were found guilty and faced mandatory life sentences. They were immediately taken into federal custody to await their sentencing. Number 3. Richard DeVries. Richard DeVries, former leader of the Hells Angels in Las Vegas, faced charges relating to a shooting that killed 6 people on a highway. Despite having already paid $70,000 for bail for his involvement in an armed assault on US 95 in June 2022, he was held on $250,000 bail on new charges related to a superseding indictment filed in September. The charges included conspiracy to commit murder, assisting a criminal gang, and racketeering, and 7 out of 8 Hells Angels members or affiliates were implicated. DeVries, along with Stephen Alo and Russell Smith, were also facing charges for incidents that occurred over Memorial Day weekend and led to the shutdown of a major Las Vegas freeway. Richard DeVries, Stephen Alo, and Russell Smith, all Hells Angels members, were indicted by a Clark County jury for their involvement in a shooting with rival gang Vagos. This may have been in retaliation for a previous death in California. The investigation is ongoing, and detectives are still piecing together the events of that day. During Memorial Day weekend, the bikers were on a ride through Arizona and southern Nevada, with evidence including a video of the group crossing the Hoover Dam. While the incident was a rarity, all 3 men are now facing the possibility of life in prison. Interestingly, despite their notoriety, Hells Angels have been known to be good neighbors who had not caused any trouble, according to locals. Number 4. Kadir P., and 7 other members. In 2019, a German court convicted 8 men affiliated with the Hells Angels biker group for the murder of a rival 5 years earlier. The 8 members of the Berlin chapter, including the chapter leader Kadir P., were sentenced to life imprisonment. Kadir P. was found guilty of ordering the killing of Tahrir O., with whom he had a long-standing conflict. It all began in the year 2014. A group of 13 Hells Angels members broke into a bookmaker's shop, and during the attack, 26-year-old Tahrir was shot and killed. The incident was caught on surveillance video, and some of the perpetrators wore masks to hide their identities. This resulted in one of the biggest biker-related trials ever in Germany. After the trial, German authorities announced that 8 members of the Berlin chapter of the Hells Angels, including the leader of the charter, Kadir P., were convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment for their involvement in the murder. One defendant was given a 12-year prison sentence for cooperating with the investigators, while another was sentenced to a year and 10 months for possessing an illegal weapon. The prosecution believed that the assault was carried out in revenge for Tahrir's involvement in a prior case. The incident also led to a separate investigation against 3 police employees for allegedly failing to prevent the murder. Number 5. Rodney Lee Rollness. In 2007, Rodney Lee Rollness, a former Hells Angel, was convicted on 12 charges, including conspiracy and racketeering. He was part of the Seattle-based Nomad chapter of the motorcycle club, which was proven to be more than just a weekend biker group, but rather a ruthless criminal organization that would assault anyone to protect their reputation. Rollness was a patch enforcer and had spent years trying to become a member, eventually being granted permission to assault a 60-year-old man and steal his belongings. He also stole 2 motorcycles and took someone's life in 2001, leading prosecutors to portray him as a vicious bully. During his sentencing, Rollness protested, accusing the presiding judge, Robert Lasnik, of accepting false testimony from paid informants and claiming that he was a victim of injustice. But Judge Lasnik was undeterred and handed down a life sentence, promising to address any appeals that might arise. Rollness's downfall serves as a reminder that even those who believe themselves above the law will eventually be held accountable for their actions. Number 6. Stephen Sanders. Former leader of the San Diego chapter of the Hells Angels, Stephen Sanders, has pleaded guilty to several charges which include kidnapping, robbery, solicitation to commit murder, and assault likely to cause serious injury. Sanders admitted to having kidnapped 2 individuals for a criminal gang in the past. This is not Sanders' first brush with the law, as he had been involved in several cases, including a 2012 conviction for robbery and assault. According to prosecutors, Sanders attempted to have witnesses and investigators in a kidnapping case against him assaulted. He also pleaded guilty to assaulting partygoers in Pacific Beach in 2013. Sanders claimed that he was pressured into pleading guilty and denied confessing that the Hells Angels were a criminal street gang, but his plea remained on record. His lawyer attempted to withdraw the plea, but the judge denied the motion. Despite Sanders' protests, the plea deal was upheld and he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Prosecutor Bonnie Dumanes praised the sentencing as a victory for law enforcement, stating that Sanders had engaged in a series of violent crimes against the citizens of San Diego and conspired to take the lives of those involved in his prosecution. Number 7. Zain Peoria Wallace. Zain Peoria Wallace, a Hells Angels prospect, was sentenced for assaulting and killing Jasmine Wilson, a mother of 2 children. Wilson was also unconscious and badly injured by her father and later died in Wellington Hospital in August 2019. Wallace pleaded guilty to several charges, including threatening severe bodily harm, assault with intent to injure, and injuries with intent to injure. The hearing was tense due to high tensions between Wallace and Wilson's families, and extra security was present at the courthouse. Justice Cook sentenced Zain Peoria Wallace to life imprisonment with a minimum non-parole period of 15 years and 6 months. However, tensions between the victims and defendants' families led to police and court security having to intervene to prevent a physical altercation. Jasmine's family members expressed their anger toward Wallace, and the courtroom was eventually cleared. Number 8. Adam Lee Hall. Adam Lee Hall, a member of the Hells Angels motorcycle club, was found guilty of the murder of 3 individuals from Pittsfield, namely David Glassner, Edward Frampton and Robert Caldwell. The prosecution believed that Hall hired David Chalou and Caius Vaidobis to kidnap and kill Glasner, who was going to testify against him in court. Frampton and Caldwell were also killed because they witnessed the kidnapping. The case received significant attention, leading to the trials being moved from Pittsfield to Springfield Hall, along with Chalou and Vaidobis, who were convicted of the murders after a 3-week-long trial and 17 hours of jury deliberation. During the sentencing, the Superior Court Judge C. Jeffrey Kinder noted Hall's lack of respect for human dignity and extreme depravity, sentencing him to 3 consecutive life sentences for the murders, along with additional sentences for armed robbery and kidnapping. Vaidobis and Chalou also received 3 consecutive life sentences each. It was revealed during the trial that Hall surrounded himself with young women whom he manipulated into committing crimes for him. Throughout the proceedings, Hall remained emotionless. Number 9. James Henry McCauley Jr. James Henry McCauley Jr., a 67-year-old member of the Hells Angels, was a key player in a drug trafficking network operating in western New York. Despite being imprisoned for his role in the deaths of members of a rival bike gang, McCauley continued to run the ring with the assistance of his wife, who had also pleaded guilty in 2016. The couple's pleas were part of a larger investigation that led to the indictment and arrest of 10 members of the Hells Angels on charges of trafficking and racketeering in February 2012. Prosecutors said that McCauley and his wife were involved in the distribution of drugs and received shipments from California. An anonymous source provided them with drugs to distribute in western New York. McCauley pleaded guilty to conspiracy to possess and distribute a controlled substance, admitting his involvement in the illegal operation. He faced a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years and a maximum of life in prison, while his wife's maximum sentence was 20 years. At his sentencing, McCauley was sentenced to 25 years in prison and banned from associating with the Hells Angels for 5 years after his release. Despite his claims of innocence and protestations of injustice, he was held responsible for his actions and faced the consequences of his involvement in the drug trafficking ring. Number 10. Ricky Baldwell. Ricky Baldwell, a member of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club's Modesto chapter, was convicted for possessing a controlled substance with intent to distribute and possession of a firearm for drug trafficking. Investigators found a safe with a firearm, narcotics, and Hells Angels memorabilia during a search of his home. Meanwhile, Modesto chapter president Randy Peachy and 3 others faced similar charges, and their arrests started in June 2019 after search warrants were served in several Stanislaus County locations. The charges against them were part of the Department of Justice's Project Safe Neighborhoods to reduce violent crimes. Baldwell was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison by U.S. District Judge Dale A. Drozd. The Hells Angels have been involved in numerous criminal activities ranging from drug trafficking to murder, and their members have faced serious legal consequences. The cases mentioned here highlight the extent of their criminal activities and the efforts of law enforcement agencies to bring them to justice. Click the subscribe button to get the latest updates, and we'll see you in the next video.